2 weeks ago I expressed my thanks for the amazing growth of the channel. I did so not because I reached 200 subscribers, because I hadn't yet, but because I had more than doubled the amount of subscribers I had in the first year of the channel, which was 89. But because that happened in like 4 months, it indicates that the channel growth is not a linear growth, but an exponential growth, I think. Is that the right term? Anyway, that means that I won't be able to keep up celebrating every new milestone in that department, because how do you even determine what those milestones are? Should I celebrate how many subscribers I expect to gain by the next anniversary and celebrate when I hit that? Or calculate when I should expect to double again and celebrate when that happens? Not to mention that I'm not sure how to actually calculate those things. So starting now, I'm just gonna celebrate every time I cross the 100 new subscriber mark. So 200, 300, 400 and so on. And if and when I cross 1,000, it'll be every 1,000, etc. Put simply, every time the first number on the left changes. So since I am now at 200, thank you so much. Enjoy the show. Hello there, I'm Simon. Welcome to my channel. Today's topic is not what I expected, actually. For real though, I had something completely different planned, but then I realized that this was also a thing that I could talk about, and that it would be completely unexpected if I just did it now. And then I kinda had to. Which is why today's topic is the Spanish Inquisition. Because nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. That's it. That's the main reason I'm making this video. So now I just have to, actually make the video. So what actually was the Spanish Inquisition? Well, the whole story actually starts with the Cathars. Even though by the time the Spanish Inquisition came around, they were already gone for almost 3 centuries. Hear me out. Basically, the Cathars were a Christian sect in southern France, and they believed some things that the Pope didn't quite agree with. So instead of saying, interesting interpretation peeps, not quite my cup of tea, but you do you. He said, kill them all. God will know who his friends are. Which is, first of all, not very nice. And second of all, almost literally something Arnaud Amalric, the papal legate, actually said during the sacking of Béziers. The point is that the Pope and his comrades began realizing that there were a bunch of those alternate interpretations of Christianity. As there always have been, by the way, but that's a whole video in itself. And they for some reason decided that that was not okay. So they founded the Papal Inquisition to counter those so-called heretics, because they needed to be countered, apparently. So they developed a legal-ish process to investigate anything they considered heresy. And in case you're wondering what they actually considered heresy, well, they tried to define that. Someone called Robert Grosseteste, who was the Bishop of Lincoln in the 12th century, defined heresy as an opinion chosen by human perception, created by human reason, founded on the scriptures, contrary to the teachings of the Church, publicly avowed and obstinately defended. So basically, any interpretation of the Bible that didn't accord with the Pope's interpretation was said to be no more than human-made. Allow me to find that ironic. Anyway, what you need to understand is that these inquisitions were not actually organized by the Pope. At least not all of them. Basically, this was not some huge Europe-wide organization by the Vatican. These were just a whole bunch of local courts, meant to investigate pretty much anything really. Well, anything that disturbed the order. And those courts would not be held by the Pope, because he was not usually nearby. Instead, it was often the local bishop, working together with the local worldly authorities, since both of those parties were supposed to be in charge of public order. Anyway, starting in 1231, the Pope did start to appoint some papal inquisitors, but they're not actually that relevant for the topic of this video, which is the Spanish Inquisition, aka the Tribunal del Santo Oficio de la Inquisición, which is a lot more epic sounding, let's be honest, even when I butcher the pronunciation like that. So in Spain, they didn't really mind heresy and other religions doing their thing all that much. Mostly because they couldn't really afford to hate on religious others, because there were far too many of them. For a long time, the Iberian Peninsula was mostly controlled by the Muslims, and the Christians were kind of forced to gather in the north, in the kingdoms of Aragon and Castile, which seems to be why they were kind of forced to have pretty inclusive laws, and they couldn't really concern themselves with prosecuting heresy. But they were trying to fight back and conquer the rest of the peninsula, which is quite big, so it took a while. But by the end of the 15th century, the so-called Reconquista was nearing its end, meaning that the Christian powers were getting, well, more powerful. And at that point, they started to care about heresy and stuff. So in 1478, the monarchs of Aragon and Castile, Isabella and Ferdinand, who were kind of big in European history, founded the Spanish Inquisition to make sure that Spain would become pretty much exclusive to Catholics. There's a lot of different theories about why exactly they did this, and all of them may or may not be true. So perhaps they had enough of all those different religions, which is pretty douchey. Or maybe they saw that the decentralization of law and order was not great for the unification of the peninsula. Or maybe they saw that the rest of Europe was not quite as tolerant as Spain was, and they just wanted to show themselves on their side of history. Or maybe the Ottoman Empire was scaring them into not wanting religious others around. Or maybe they just wanted to establish religious dominance. Or maybe they just wanted the Pope to shut up about Catholic authority in their lands, without actually giving him power. Probably all of the above. So that's why the Spanish Inquisition was founded. But who were they? Well, mostly Dominicans, it seems. It all started when a guy called Alonso de Ojeda told Queen Isabella that there existed something called crypto-Judaism, which is basically hidden Judaism. So this guy went to the Queen and told her that there were people who were just pretending to be Christians, while still secretly being Jews. Now, in a movie or a novel, this would probably be a lie, and part of a bigger conspiracy. Probably to find the Holy Grail or something. But in this case, I actually think that it was probably just true. Because that's kinda to be expected when you pretty much force everyone to choose between converting to Catholicism and leaving the country. Anyway, for some reason that surprised Isabella, and so she and her husband, Ferdinand of Aragon, sent a little letter to the Pope asking for an inquisition, because as I said, they didn't really have one before that. And so the Spanish Inquisition was founded, and a Dominican friar called Tomás de Torquemada became first the president of the Inquisition, and then the Inquisitor General. It's also interesting to mention that Torquay himself was descended from people who were converted to Catholicism, which, if you think about it, is not that special. If you go back far enough, there's always going to be someone who converted. Anyway, it's important because those conversos were the main targets of the Inquisition, because of the whole crypto business. Because apparently all supervillains hate their own lineage. Now, the Inquisition is of course by its very nature an investigation. That's kind of what the term means. The thing is that they weren't very good at it. I mean, they were good at getting results, but they didn't quite meet the standards of professionalism that we would want from people who literally have the power to convict people. Their investigations consisted mostly of interrogating people and people's interpretations of what was happening. All of it spiced with a fair amount of religious prejudice, so it wasn't quite as fair and objective as we want it to be. But the most obvious part about the Inquisition was not the investigation or the trial. The most spectacular part was something called the Ortodopy, which I'm mispronouncing on purpose, because I have no idea how it's supposed to be pronounced. So an Ortodopy is technically an act of faith, like that's what it means. Now that term kind of implies that the defendant would have to perform some kind of act to prove that they were true Christians, and that they resent their evil ways, and that it won't happen again. That's what I think when I see that term. And I suppose it could be that too. But what it really was a sentence. End of the road. Now that's not necessarily by killing them. In fact, they always gave the option of reconciliation and penitence. But it is the resolution of the trial. And they were generally a public affair. These auto da fes were spectacles. Now, this is honestly a call that I don't get to make, but I'm gonna do it anyway. But I think that pretty much proves that the Inquisition was, at least in part, a political and a populist thing, and not just a religious thing or meant purely for keeping peace and order. Which is not to say that everyone cooperating with the Inquisition was aware of that. Any or all of them may have well believed that they were doing the right thing. I don't know. That's a thing that I am even less qualified to talk about than everything else I just said. So let's just do the YouTube thing. It's all in the end screen, peeps, you know the drill. In addition to that stuff, if you have any corrections or extra information, please leave them down below. If you don't know what to comment, how about this? Did you learn anything today? Doesn't have to be from this video. Maybe everything I just said was just common knowledge. Anyway, that will do for this unexpected video. Thank you very much for watching.